came to Northwestern, graduated in 2000. How did you end up here in the first place from New York?
My dad grew up in Skokie, and in ninth grade he gave me a Northwestern hat. It wasn't like, kid, you're going to go here. But I kind of started following, and then, I loved the idea of the theater school. I loved the idea of Big Ten sports. It was just going to be the school I was going to go to. Then, when they went to the Rose Bowl, my mother said to me, I hope that you know that you don't want them to win, because you might not get in. And, I guess suggesting that I was not qualified or something. I don't know what that was. I also was going to apply early. And what has become a legendary story in my family, why do I have so many stories? I took the SAT, and on the second section, I got very upset. I was flustered. I broke my pencil in half and left the room. Walked home, knocked on the door. I just left about 50 minutes ago. My mom looks at me in horror. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just got flustered. I didn't think I was doing well. I'd just rather not have this count. She goes, you can't apply in Northwestern now. Yep. So I had the pressure of a month to come through with a good score.
Came through with
enough.
Yeah, it's the going legend. If you talk to enough alumni now, is I wouldn't have gotten in today if you had the standards today. I wouldn't have gotten in by it.
But that's like the whole if game in sports.
Yeah, exactly.
If they wouldn't have scored the free throw, we wouldn't have been able to hit the three-pointer. I mean,
right.
You can't do that.
As Babe Ruth could he hit today's
pitching?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So if he took HGH, whatever.
His own things going there. So when you left Northwestern, you were looking for, your first gig was with ESPN. You were there, you left, you came back. I like the story when you kind of convinced them that they needed you, which is pretty brash for someone who's just finishing their undergraduate degree. Bold.
Yeah. Well, so a guy came here from Northwestern. He was looking for an ESPN.com intern, and I noticed the posting at Medill, and I, for 2 years, had hosted a sports business radio show on WNUR, which was really successful. We did a great job. I realized very quickly that everyone wants to talk to athletes. They don't want to talk to you. No one is talking to the executives in sports, and they'll talk their head off for hours. And I got great guests on the show. I really got interested in sports business. I knew it was a niche that sports fans needed to know about the business. If you want to be a year-round sports fan, you need to know. So I educated myself. I read the books, did the radio show. Trade Publication Sports Business Journal comes out my sophomore year. There's momentum here. And so I went to this meeting. Luckily, it was not with an HR person. Otherwise, I would have never got the job. A guy named Dave Albright. I said, Dave, I'm not here for the internship. I'm here to be your next sports business reporter. They had never had one, obviously, nor did he necessarily did that, ring as something that they definitely needed. But there were 3 headlines that day with dollar signs in it, and I think I got him to the point of he's a good executive, and he said, "Okay, come to Bristol and interview." I interviewed and got the job.
That's fantastic. That works out.
It's crazy, yeah.
Yeah. Sports business you were interested in early.
I was interested in business and sports and the journalism of that. I just felt like, I could establish myself as the person who knew that space. I thought the journalism world was really daunting from the standpoint of being a general anchor. How good could you be? Is it your voice? Is it your look? There are too many subjective things. And I felt if I established a niche and had the skill and the knowledge that I could get there.
So fast forward a little bit, you were one of the first then, it's about 6 years later, you jumped on Twitter. Decided that's the thing. Like you were did you get into that slowly, or did that kind of?
No, I was there.
Quickly
I wasn't close to the first, but I think I was certainly among the group of people in sports who came along. Lance Armstrong and Shaq started in the fall of 2008. I was there in March of 2009. And it was fun to see how all these people would dismiss. I don't want to know what people are eating for dinner. It was almost like people were doing a disservice to themselves by making these judgments of something they've never looked at. Something was never more hated by people who've never looked at And I had spent so much time. It wasn't even as the communication tool for me. I had spent so much time trying to every day catch up with everything I was supposed to report on. So at first I had done going through links, going through newspaper links, and I would do that for 2 hours every morning. And then I had RSS feeds, blog feeds, and then Twitter. Hey, this is pretty cool. If you follow the right people, then you can know about everything. So it became a time saver instead of a time suck for me.
What's different about it now? I mean, you've built a following, you've built, and I suppose there's good and bad to that. So
yes,
very good about it.
Good is that you can disseminate pieces of information very quickly. It's your own way to get things out there. If it's not TV material or it's not necessarily a story or so it is your own distribution system, and I think that's probably the strongest part of it. Also, I think today I kind of always say that we don't live in a monologue world anymore. We live in a dialogue world. So the best stories are when you kind of can feel what people are feeling, and you don't just decide what a story is. You understand what the stories are. So as a feedback mechanism, Twitter's great for me, whether taking polls. Sometimes I throw out a tweet, I think it's just a tweet, and then people go nuts on it, and I figured, wow, this is even going to reach a TV piece type level. So that's the best part of it.
Is there a story that's taken on a life of its own from Twitter that surprised you, like more than another?
Well, I'd say that when I tweet out anything with bacon, beer stats, I mean, these things fly. Pictures, people love pictures of food. The thing is that I'm at ESPN, but I also do ABC, business correspondent for them, and I kind of do like the weird, wacky, crazy business type stories, and I think that kind of allows me to have a little freedom with what I'm doing. But if you tweet out something that looks good, food wise, it will go crazy.
Pumpkin's a big one, right?
Pumpkin,
was
yeah.
that your first Nightline story?
Yes,
Pumpkin?
yeah.
So that's
done the business of pumpkin, and that's just observing. Pumpkin's been around since before the Pilgrims. Why all of a sudden does every coffee place have a pumpkin coffee? And by the way, they all taste different. So kind of got me thinking. Pumpkin's not really a flavor; it's more of a feeling. That's what they're selling you, and so we did that story.
Nick, when someone throws you from Nightline, is that when you start feeling like was it Sports Center or Nightline? What do you feel like?
Nightline
now is this?
No, I think it's both. I mean, Nightline's always been a show that from the Ted Koppel days to now, working with these guys, Terry Moran, Bill Weir. I mean, these guys. It's great to have a place on television where you can delve into a topic for 8 minutes, and that's what's awesome about Nightline. By the way, I mean, move time slots to even later in the night, and does incredibly well. It's a show that people can't give up, no matter how late they put it. It's a great show, and I think people are kind of the style of it is very unique. When it seems like everything's done, Nightline kind of I think gets through all the clutter.
And bringing it back to the beginning, is there something about Northwestern that a class or an experience you had here that still sort of drives your identity or maybe your self-brand even now?
Well, I think the greatest part about Northwestern for me was just the learning environment. That sounds kind of like boring, but like the fact that kids wanted to read their books on their free time, and the pushing and the studying. It was when you studied for something, and even if you were in a class with someone else, it had the Midwest mentality of study as hard as you can, but I'm not going to pressure you when we're studying together. I think a lot of schools have this reputation of you can feel the heat, and so Northwestern had this just study hard, but the Midwest mentality of it was friendly, it wasn't competitive. I think friendships were amazing. I just love this place, and I think that if I had the same idea and went to another school, I would not be where I was today.
Awesome. So we had a few questions come in from before we started today, so I want to ask you some of those. And Start with, Northwestern's kind of brand identity or identity in the marketplace, maybe just on the sports side. When you see Chicago's Big Ten team and you come back for a Wrigley game and the marquee's painted purple, you think, finally we've got something that, does that resonate with you? Or,
you know what? I don't care what other people think.
Okay.
I think that the person who's going to come to this school, yes, through sports and, watching on ESPN, and the success does potentially breed a greater student who casts a wider net. But as someone who's graduated, I don't necessarily pay that much attention to we've arrived, because I'm kind of like Pat Fitzgerald, football coach. I'm kind of sick of it. I don't need you to tell me that I've arrived. Fans kind of play with a chip on their shoulder too if you're a Northwestern guy, and so it's almost like I expect to be bigger, and I'm very thankful for Jim Phillips and Maury Shapiro, and the fact is, we could have gotten a president that wasn't interested in sports, and to me that would have been devastating. But we get Maury Shapiro, who loves sports and wants to be on the sideline of not only football games but every sport, which is just incredible. And so as a fan, as someone who works in sports, I at least have comfort that Northwestern's going to go the right way, and that is not compromise integrity, but be very interested in being at the top of the standings in every sport.
There's a question that came in and kind of leads here, because we're sponsored. Under Armour has a sponsorship for our uniforms now, outfits the athletes. And someone asked the question, what does Under Armour do different, to get this foothold than, say, what Nike has done or Adidas?
Right. Well, Adidas did not pay attention to Northwestern. They didn't, at retail they had different colors. You can't get our colors wrong. Different colors than what's on the field. I think they were a little bit too late to exploit us. Under Armour, it's their only Big Ten team. So they're going to test things.
So next year, right?
Well,
if we count Maryland,
right? Maryland's going to be crazy. But I think that's something that's we're not one of 100 with Nike, like we're with Nike. We're one of 30, and I think there is very much an arms race in outdueling who in terms of uniform colors and schemes and all this stuff. So I think it's a better, more healthier, more deserving relationship than the Adidas one.
Does Under Armour approach college athletics differently, with how they outfit teams or
I think
they're trying to do?
I think it's the same. They're a little bit more spendthrift in terms of, their marketing budget is somewhere in the $120 million range annually. Nike's is somewhere in the $2.4 billion range. So they're still they've climbed, they've fought, and they've established a brand against the background of Nike that no one's ever done. But they're still small.
Mm-hmm.
They're still 1/20th of Nike size.
Another question that came through this morning, it was announced that down at Florida Atlantic, they've signed a sponsorship agreement with a prison.
Yeah.
And the question was, how much do colleges particularly have to look when they're trying to manage their identities about who they partner up with?
That's a really weird deal. Now, it's not like it's with the prison company.
It's not Chico's bail out of the stadium.
He has a relationship with the school. I kind of think it's a little misguided. The guy should either put his name on it, or it doesn't really seem like it makes sense. Does it really follow the naming rights model of if we put the name on the stadium and activate it, people will come to our prison? It's like what it doesn't follow the model, right, of what naming rights really are, and so it got a lot of attention. I never heard of his company before, and now I heard of it. But then, where does that get me? I'm going to send my wife to his prison.
No,
it just doesn't make sense.
So it's obvious you got to vet these things at your university or anywhere else. You don't want to just or you think about it.
But it's hard. It's harder. People say and you guys in the development office. People say something like, when someone comes to you and says, I'm going to make a $5 million gift, how much do you really care about the background of that? Nevin Shapiro at Miami. I mean, it was dirty money, but how much do you vet? And I think that's a question. How much do you care where it's coming from, what the name is attached to it, that kind of thing. I'm not suggesting that most people that donate money have nefarious pasts or whatever, but it's kind of interesting. It does bring that whole thing up, and I do think that the higher the money is, the harder it is to say, no, we must put your name on it or nothing. It's ridiculous to put your prison company on. I think you become powerless.
Another question was asked was, this was from someone in Cleveland. He pointed out the Cleveland Plain Dealer's another paper that's going 3 days a week.
Like the Times-Picayune.
Like the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, these papers are going away. And is there kind of any hope for 5-day-a-week print journalism, or are we moving to this all-digital world faster than we realize?
Well, I think that this is not to cut down the pay of journalists or not to have them make a living. It's being done because of the marketplace, and I obviously you're going more towards people on the iPad, people scrolling on their Blackberries or their iPhones, and the money just isn't there for the whole process of delivering the paper, for printing the paper, and yes, so I do think it's on the decline. The question is, how does the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Times-Picayune, get ahead, and how do they break stories when they're not publishing? I mean, to have a physical copy is always nice for a paper, but the main question for me is, if you're now going to have less staff, how do you then break a story digitally? Are you going to lose that story now digitally because someone else, is more well staffed? If that makes any sense, because I think there is certainly the cut down there, but it's just the market demands. There's a lot of mergers in the business. Titans are taking over, and it's the idea of not getting a paper seems strange, but when you look at the bottom line, it just doesn't bear out.
And you know a lot about sports rights fees and the ballot was on to have something live product. Is that even as a viewer, you realize one of the only things I watch on TV in real time is live TV.
Right, my wife hasn't seen a commercial in 5 years. I see a commercial every single time I watch. And that's really where the rights fees, that's why sports is so valuable. It's un-TiVoable.
Right.
You can't TiVo. Right, you can't TiVo it. And if you try, it's like the most brutal experience in the world. Like trying to avoid the ESPN bottom line, shutting off your phone. Oh my God, my phone vibrated at 6:21. What does that mean?
What's going to happen?
Does that mean that, like, I've had that before, and then you go through it, you're like, people wouldn't be calling if we didn't win. Or it just wouldn't be like that. So it does drive you nuts, and that is what I think sports lives off of. It's what the TV stations, the reason why the networks can pay what they pay is because they do have that revenue stream that becomes more and more valuable as my wife watches The Bachelor or The Bachelorette and does not watch one commercial.
So the follow-up to that one of our watchers asked, was, do you think cable companies, eventually we see a world where, sports rights sort of break away and there's sort of these standalone, whether it's a la carte, the only thing you really get is ESPN, which charges you $15 a month and you don't get the Food Network anymore, and it kind of kills off.
Easy, don't double up our price. ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Classic, it's around $7 a month. It's the highest by a wide margin. But my main boss, John Skipper at ESPN, says he does not envision the a la carte ever happening, because if you did do the a la carte, you would be destroying so many of the small players that people get, that people enjoy. They literally wouldn't be able to pay for it because, they're worth like 23 cents, but they're only worth that in the whole structure of things. Sure. So from what I'm told, a la carte won't happen, so sorry to the grandma who doesn't watch us. But it seems like it's not going to happen that way.
That's the live sports will be where things continue to sort of resolve.
Yeah, I mean, the rights fees have continued to